Thanks.
You know, in NOAH, we are very proud to host the most number of unicorns on stage. It's one of the metrics we look at. And BlaBlaCar is one of these unicorns. It's a French unicorn. And interestingly, as a French unicorn, you couldn't become just a unicorn working in France. And I think the main difference from when we met the first time in London 2013, you were very big in France. And yeah, tell us, what happened since?
Yeah, so I think when I presented at NOAH, so it was 2013 in London, actually, there was no Berlin back then. Essentially, the service was about like a few million people. I think we had like 3-4 million people, 90% of that in France. And most of the activity, like 90% of the activity was in France, but I was already telling that story of, we want to be a European company and we're going to expand all over Europe.
And I was like, good luck in Germany as a French company.
Yeah, so we were not in Germany back then and we had like a big competitor. And I would say, if I look at the last 4 years, we've been mostly focusing on global expansion, right? So we went from being mostly a French company to a pretty global play. So today we're in 22 countries. 75% of the usage is now outside of France. We have 65 million members. So now
65 million members,
yeah.
And how many drivers?
So we don't really count in terms of like drivers and riders because that change, right? So if you look at the activity of long-distance carpooling, so essentially it's like normal folks on both sides of the marketplace. So it's not professional drivers. And we find that drivers and passengers actually swap, right? So 30% of the community is actually sometime driving, sometime being passengers. But roughly speaking, in terms of like behavior, we see a third of the community would behave as drivers at some point in time, and 2/3 would behave as passenger.
I guess access to car is a limiting factor for some of the travelers.
Yeah, although
although you fixed this. I think last year, I asked BlaBlaCar management, several people, so you're growing fast, but how could you grow faster? Where is your bottleneck? And it was on the driver's side, and then you came up with an amazing idea. Maybe you can share.
Yeah, so maybe just to rebound on that, I think most of the limiting factor, so maybe if I go back in time, right? So the question I had all the time, especially back in 2013 when we were doing fundraising, was how big is the market? And I always gave like I guess the worst answer you can give to a VC back then, which is, I don't know. and I've been a VC and I know it's a bad answer. But the reality is, what people ignored is that if you look at mobility in the, call that like 50 kilometer to 600 kilometer, so mid-long distance, 80 to 85% of mobility is actually done with a car. So it's not done by a train or a bus, it's actually people using their car, driving their car.
Is it 80 to 90%?
Yeah, it's 80 to 85%.
In pretty much every country?
In every country, mostly Europe, right? So if you look at Europe, it's the same in the US. And if you look at like 20-year trends, it's flat. So it's not changing, it has not changed. So it's almost as much in 18 as it was like 20 years ago. So most people travel those journeys by car. So for us, the challenge was more, how do you convince drivers and then passengers to share their car? And the biggest problem we were solving for actually was not competition or size of the market, it was more from a behavior point of view, how do you create enough trust in a community so that it's okay for a driver to share his or her car when they're driving from Berlin to Hamburg? And initially, like 10 years ago, when we pitched the idea, people told us, it's insane. People don't do that. It's risky, it's crazy. And if you get like 100, I always remember that when we pitched the company for the first time during our MBA, actually, people told us, if you get 100,000 people using it, it's a miracle. Today we have 65 million, right? So I think the biggest part was education. And today, like what we solve for and what we try to crack is actually education of people and building like a more convenient and more trustworthy product so that we can accelerate growth.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the sharing economy is also pushed by the Airbnbs of the world.
Yep.
It's okay to share your house, you can also share your car. So how much money have you raised since we met?
So when we met, we had raised about 10 million from Axel. So it was really the beginning of that growth phase. We raised that in 2012. Since then, we raised like close to 400 million, so mostly in 14, 15, and 16. And essentially, it was mostly to do this global expansion, right? Because I think we had something pretty unique back then, which was no one except in Germany, actually, where we had one competitor that we acquired actually in 2015, but no one was doing that in any market. And today, it's still kind of the case, right? So if you look at what we do, we tend to have substitutes like buses or trains, where that passengers would use instead of a BlaBlaCar, and still use obviously a lot. But we still don't have any direct competition. So it's been like a case of market creation in every market we went to.
Now, a lot of companies who've raised these amounts, like 2, 3, and in your case 400 plus, are not profitable. And especially in the US, also companies which are going public now, they're like a Dropbox or so, they're loss-making. Is BlaBlaCar loss-making, or did you manage to get profit?
So today we still loss-making, actually not that much. So we're getting to a point of more or less operating.
You control your bottom line, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's more a case than essentially. I mean, markets like France, for example, are highly profitable for us, and markets, Spain, France, like the oldest market. And today it's more of a balance where, in fact, there is no good case for us to burn tons of money to grow faster, because 80 to 85% of the traffic on BlaBlaCar is actually organic and word of mouth.
And do they stay? Your customers, they're loyal to the platform. What's your like 1-year retention on a driver? You don't give an exact number, but
yeah, without giving exact numbers, yes, it's very sticky. And I guess it's true of most C2C marketplaces or classified or things like that, because essentially it's very hard to crack liquidity. And once you have like millions of drivers and millions of passengers sharing,
it's about critical mass, right? I mean, it's the same as the taxi apps. If you don't get a taxi,
yeah, it's maybe even stronger than what you see in taxi app, because essentially you don't have this B2C component where you have thousands of drivers in a city would probably enable you to do like a taxi app. For us, the notion that it's nationwide, essentially you need like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people engaging so that you crack liquidity. So once you have that, plus you've built trust, I would say the barrier to entry is pretty high. So yes, retention is very, very strong. So that's the beauty of the business. It's hard to create liquidity, then it goes on its own, essentially.
So how big you think you can get? Dara told us yesterday that Uber makes 50 billion GMV, but they only have a 0.5% share of the driven mile in the US. So how do you look at the market? You probably now have a better answer for the VCs.
Yeah, well, I think as Dara is saying, I mean, the market of transportation by car, that was my point earlier, is just humongous. So I think the problem is not so much like the size of the market, how many miles are being driven, how many empty seats you have in cars. That's humongous. So I think it's more about like cracking good use cases. So for us, if we think of like the next era of BlaBlaCar, or at least what we're focusing on right now, is we realize, initially people use BlaBlaCar because it's cool, because it's cheap, so it was cheaper than a train. And increasingly, they use BlaBlaCar because it's convenient. And it's convenient because it's a car, right? So if you think of like, why do people use a car to go from Berlin to Hamburg and to travel around, to go to the Alps? Because it's door to door. Like the car is highly convenient because it gets you exactly from where you are to exactly where you want to go. And essentially, today we're getting to a point, so we're doing some tests like that in France, where you can bring that level of convenience to passengers by allowing drivers to do like small detour along the way.
That's like the pooling concept.
So, well,
is that a new product you're launching?
So this one is the evolution of BlaBlaCar. So essentially, it's just enabling drivers. So let's say you drive from, I don't know, like Paris to the Alps. You're going to pass by Burgundy. You're going to pass by Lyon. You're going to pass by all kind of cities and villages where you can actually do small detour, pick up and drop off people along the way.
That's huge value creation.
And it's huge value creation because the only way those folks could travel is drive their own car. And you start to change behavior where you realize, okay, actually there is a guy driving by that could pick me up.
People with 2 passengers in the car,
on average,
do they sit in the front or in the back?
No, always the front.
Always the front.
So it's very bizarre.
So it's very different to a taxi situation, right?
It's completely different, yeah.
So let's ask, who came with BlaBlaCar to NOAH?
It's not the right crowd.
See, I told you there's a good thing to come here. People will learn. How much money would a person from Hamburg make if they bring back a passenger from here?
Berlin
it's
to
like 300
Hamburg,
kilometers.
Yeah, so it's going to be probably like 20 euro per passenger, times 3 passengers, 60 euro. So if you think of it, for a driver that would do that anyway, a round trip, essentially you collect 120 euro for something you would do anyway.
Yeah,
it adds up.
Makes a lot of sense. And maybe it's less boring, right? I mean, you told me that's one of the biggest motivations for people to do this, to meet people. So talk quickly about the new product initiatives. I think you're doing stuff in the insurance, you have BlaBla lines.
Yep.
What are the top 3 initiatives
Yeah,
you're
so
doing?
the top 3, so the one I just described, so essentially enabling drivers to do detour and getting closer to people home. So it's like almost like long distance door-to-door type service, which you can do with a car. Another one is aggregating more professional supply. So buses, minibuses, especially in emerging market, where we realize...
Is Addison Lee a partner in London?
No, because we really target, again, like long distance.
Oh, long distance, sorry.
So we would really go after like, buses, minibuses. We look at that mostly in emerging market. I think Chantal is going to be on stage and she'll talk about that in great details. Massive opportunity for us in markets like Russia, Brazil, most emerging market. And the thing we launched is actually short distance carpooling with a product called BlaBlaCar.
Yes.
And here it's super exciting because actually we bring the same concept to your daily commute. So it's a high frequency product. We launched that and pushed that just a few months ago, and we're already getting a massive traction with high frequency, right? So that's the holy grail for us.
I love that you innovate constantly. One last question, the US market.
So there are 2 markets we've never done actually. So US, because, and it's long answer, I'm not sure we have time, but we don't feel we have good product market fit in the US.
Will you be ready one day for the US market, you believe? Will you try?
I'm not sure. I mean, right now it's not a focus, right? So this year or next year, we're not focusing on that, nor on China, essentially.
What's your biggest country currently, is rides?
So today, interestingly, Russia, in terms of usage, took over France as the biggest market in terms of usage. So it's really Russia, France, Brazil, Germany, Spain.
Very global.
So it's pretty global. It's pretty spread.
Nicolas, thank you so much.
Thank
Later
you.
we have Chantal, who will tell us a little bit about the magic, how you went so far internationally. Thank you so much, Nicolas.